They thought I was just the country girl they could ignore, but tonight, everything would change. They were about to learn who they were really messing with. The moment I walked into that ballroom, I heard it. Sloan Whitmore, my brother's perfect fiancée, leaning toward her bridesmaids, champagne glass in hand. Her whisper was loud enough to carry across the room, and I know she meant it that way. Oh, great, the stinky country girl is here. Her friends giggled like a pack of hyenas in designer dresses. Sloane didn't even bother to look at me. I was just some embarrassment she had to tolerate, a stain on her perfect evening. What Sloane didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, I owned this hotel, the Monarch Hotel. The chandeliers above her head, mine. The silverware she was eating with, mine. The Italian marble beneath her heels, mine. Every inch of this place belonged to me, and by the end of tonight, that little whisper, it was going to cost her everything she had ever dreamed of. My name is Bethany Burns. I'm 31 and I grew up in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, a town so small the only traffic jam we ever had was when Mr. Henderson's cows escaped and blocked Main Street for hours. I left when I was 18 and never looked back, not because I hated it there, but because my family made it clear there was no place for me. Garrett, my older brother, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, and everything I did was compared to him. I was always falling short. If I got an A, he had gotten an A+. If I made the softball team, he was the captain. My mother, Patricia, had a special way of looking at me that made me feel like a rough draft, while Garrett was the finished masterpiece. So I left, took a bus to the city with nothing but $200 and a stubborn refusal to fail. People back home thought I was struggling. They imagined me in a tiny apartment eating instant noodles, which was true. I stood there, feeling like a ghost at my own engagement party, watching everyone else around me in their little perfect bubbles. My mother, Patricia, was in her element, surrounded by her friends, bragging about Garrett's success and, of course, his perfect fiancé. I could hear snippets of their conversations, always about how wonderful Garrett was, how lucky Sloane was to have him. I could practically see the air between them crackling with pride. Garrett, my brother, the golden child, the one who always did things right, the one who never had to fight for approval. And here I was, standing in the shadow of a life I never felt a part of. But tonight, things would be different. I spotted Sloane across the room, her smile as fake as the diamonds around her neck. She was chatting with a few of her friends, every word calculated to charm and win everyone over. I could see it in the way she moved, the way she laughed. Everything about her was designed to show off how perfect her life was, and it made me sick. I wasn't just some small-town girl who had stumbled into the city. No, I had built something. I had built my empire brick by brick, while the world assumed I was struggling. They had no idea what I had achieved, and that was exactly the way I liked it. The night continued, but the mood had shifted. I could feel it in the air. Something wasn't right. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Garrett had become increasingly tense, glancing around the room, his eyes narrowing as if he couldn't shake a bad feeling. But he wasn't seeing what I saw. He wasn't seeing the cracks in the Whitmore family's perfect facade. Franklin Whitmore, Sloane's father, had been acting strange. Every few minutes he'd pull out his phone, frown at the screen, and mutter something under his breath. Delilah, Sloane's mother, wasn't any better. Her smile, that constant smile, was starting to look more like a mask than anything genuine. She kept glancing nervously at her husband, then back at Sloane, as though something was making her uneasy. And Sloane? She had been working the room like a politician, shaking hands, air-kissing, but there was something behind her eyes. It wasn't love, it was hunger. She wasn't interested in Garrett, she was interested in what Garrett could give her. And that, I realized, was exactly what my family was about to lose if I didn't act. I stepped away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner by the bar. My eyes stayed on the Whitmores, observing them like a hawk. They thought they had everyone fooled, but they didn't realize they were about to. The more I watched, the clearer it became. The Whitmores were masters at keeping up appearances, but underneath their polished exteriors was a crumbling empire. I could see the cracks, the forced smiles, the nervous glances, especially from Franklin. Every time he checked his phone, I could tell something was off. And it wasn't just stress over the wedding. No, this was bigger. As the night wore on, this sense of urgency grew. I could feel the tension building inside me, knowing that every minute I waited was another minute they got away with their lies. But I had to be patient. The time wasn't right yet. I needed more information, something concrete to take them down. That's when Wesley returned. He didn't need to say anything. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. He handed me a small stack of documents, each one more damning than the last. I skimmed through them quickly, my heart pounding with each new revelation. The Whitmores were deep in debt. Not just the kind of debt that could be solved with a loan, but the kind of debt that came with investigations, federal investigations. They had been running a scheme, taking money from unsuspecting investors, promising returns on real estate deals that didn't exist. The night dragged on, but I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Every moment I spent in that ballroom was a reminder of everything I had endured, of how far I had come, and of what was at stake. But the Whitmores weren't done yet. They were still playing their game, pretending to be the perfect family, the perfect couple, while their lies threatened to tear everything apart. I excused myself from the bar, my mind racing with the documents Wesley had given me. They were worse than I could have imagined. This wasn't just some shady business deal. This was fraud. The Whitmores had been scamming people for years, funneling money into fake real estate projects, and now they were trying to marry into my family to cover up their tracks. It was almost laughable. As I walked through the ballroom, I could see Garrett standing next to Sloane, his arm around her waist, smiling that same smile he always wore when he was pretending everything was perfect. He had no idea. He had no idea what kind of people he was dealing with, or the truth about the woman he was about to marry. But I couldn't blame him. He had always been the golden child, the one everyone looked up to, the one who never had to fight for what he wanted. I had been the one left behind, the one who had to work for everything. I had made my own path, built my own life, and now it was time to expose the truth. I walked up to Garrett, my face calm, my emotions hidden beneath the surface. He turned to me with that familiar smile, his eyes lighting up as if everything was normal. But the tension in the room was palpable. I could feel it in the air, the uneasy quiet that had fallen over the ballroom after my conversation with Garrett. But I wasn't done. I had one more thing to do, one final piece of the puzzle to expose, and I wasn't going to let it slip through my fingers. The Whitmores were still trying to act like everything was fine, but their cracks were showing. Franklin was pacing by the bar, his phone in hand, muttering to himself. Delilah was talking to a guest, but her eyes kept darting to Franklin. Sloane? She was trying to smile, but it was strange now. Her mask was slipping, and she had no idea what was coming. Wesley returned just as I was starting to feel the weight of the moment. He was calm, but I could tell he had something. His expression was hard to read, but his eyes told me everything. "We've got the confirmation," he said, his voice low. "It's all real. The fraud, the Ponzi scheme, they've been doing this for years." I nodded, my heart pounding with adrenaline. The truth was finally coming out, and there was no going back. Wesley handed me a folder, the same one I had seen earlier, but this time it was thicker. There was more. Documents, court filings, bank records, all confirming what I had suspected. The Whitmores were a house of cards, and their empire was about to collapse. It was time. I walked toward the stage, my steps confident, purposeful. The DJ was in the middle of a song, the music pumping through the speakers, but I wasn't here for music. I was here for the truth. As I reached the front of the room, I could feel every eye on me. The crowd was starting to murmur, wondering what was happening, but they didn't know yet. I took the microphone from Franklin's hand and the room fell silent. The air was thick with anticipation. This was it. This was the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady and calm. "I apologize for the interruption, but I think you all need to know who you're really celebrating tonight." I glanced at the Whitmores, who were frozen in place, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. They didn't know how to react, but I wasn't done, not by a long shot. The Whitmores, Franklin and Delilah, are not who they claim to be. They have been running a scam, a Ponzi scheme. The room was in chaos, but I stood there, unmoving, watching it all unfold. The agents were moving swiftly, surrounding the Whitmores, but I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. There were still people in that room who needed to hear the truth, who needed to see what had just happened. I wasn't going to let this moment slip away unnoticed. Sloane, or should I say Sandra, was screaming now. Her once perfect demeanor was gone, replaced with panic and rage. She tried to make a break for it, but security was already closing in. Her high heels clicked against the marble floor as she stumbled toward the door, but it was too late. The truth had already been laid bare, and she was trapped in it. Franklin was still in shock. He kept muttering, "This isn't what it seems, there's a mistake." But nobody was listening. Delilah, her makeup smudged with tears, clung to her husband, desperate for some kind of salvation, but it was clear there was nothing left for them. I stood back, letting the scene unfold. My family, the people who had looked down on me for so long, were witnessing the consequences of their blind trust in the Whitmores. Garrett, standing near the back, still looked lost. His face was pale, his mouth opening and closing as if trying to form words that wouldn't come. I could see the realization hitting him in waves. His entire world had just been shattered. The agents were leading the Whitmores out of the ballroom, their heads hung low, their futures in ruins. But it wasn't just them who were going to face the fallout. My family, my mother especially, would have to answer for their role in this. The necklace, the lies, the way they had treated me all these years, it was all coming back to haunt them. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. There was so much I wanted to say,